I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you.
All right, welcome back to the next episode of the Root Zone podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Stout. I am excited to have my next guest, Mr. Seth Jones. He is editorial director for Landscape Magazine and Golfdom Magazine. That is a fairly new position for Mr. Seth Jones. You attended Kansas University's William Allen White School of Journalism. Is that correct? I try
Rock
to do a
Shock
little
Jayhawk.
research.
Yep, that is correct. That's me. I will claim that university. I love it. I'm still only about 10 miles away from campus right now, so you can tell how much I love it.
Awesome. 23 years in the business, dealing with golf and turf and dealing with little companies like me and larger companies across the country, correct?
Yeah, all shapes and sizes. I've got to meet you name it. You go through the contacts on my phone, and it's pretty remarkable all the different people I've managed to come across. And sometimes it's intentional, and sometimes it's by sheer luck. So
Yeah.
it's definitely a lot of experience talking to different companies and different people.
And so we'll just jump right in. How long have you been at Landscape Magazine? And I like to say slash because I love golf, so I subscribe to Golfdom Magazine too. So and the the website too. So this is a big package, and I'm sure it pulls you in a couple different directions. How'd you get started in that?
Well, thank you first of all for subscribing to both of my magazines. That doesn't happen often, but it is cool to hear that when people get both of my publications, because in my mind, people either knows me as the landscape management guy or the Golfdom guy, but not
Yeah.
both. And so I actually got my start with North Coast Media on Golfdom. And so I've been the editor in chief of that magazine for 13 years, and I still maintain that role on Golfdom. And then about 6 years ago, they started talking to me about maybe taking on a dual role with the company, since there's a lot of crossover between, in some cases, readers, but definitely on advertisers and in events and whatnot, and some similar content. And so I decided to go ahead and I made the leap, and I took on landscape management as well as editor in chief of that publication. I did that up until just recently when we had some staff turnover, and I needed some help, and I needed a heavy hitter to come and help me out. So I
Yeah.
actually reached out to an old friend of mine. I was his intern, and he was my boss, and then I worked for him full time for a while. And so I hired Scott Hollister to come in and help me out on landscape management. So named him editor in chief of landscape management, promoted myself to editorial director, which really doesn't mean anything other than me and Scott are working together now. I mean, if you look at the masthead, people were worried, did Seth get demoted? Did he? No, I went out and I got a friend to come help me out. And now both of us
Yeah.
and the rest of my team, I've got another team of young editors who help out and designers. So it's not just me and Scott for sure, but so that's when it's changed recently. And it was cool because I was just at Jeffrey Scott Summer Growth Summit, and I had a couple of different people stop me and congratulate me, which was cool. I was like, okay, you saw that. And then I had a couple people who were like, hey, why am I not getting the email from you anymore? What's the deal? And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
well, here,
Yeah.
I'll tell you. And so it was good to see that people were taking notice and cared and wanted to know, because I've gotten to know a lot of people over the years, and it's just such a massive industry. You forget how many people are paying attention, and so to be at that
Well,
event and have that was cool.
that's why I kind of I'm always brainstorming like different ideas. Who can I bring on, like different genres, kind of like I don't want to always just bring on another green guy that owns a landscaping or lawn care company or something like that. And what I see from you is like, even when just the couple times we talked in the growth summer that I went to, your networking is so I would say all over the place, but like kind of it's in symphony too, if that makes sense. Like where you're getting pulled in 1,000 different directions, but you almost thrive on it and you love it. And that's kind of how I am too. Is like I like knowing Brian from up in New Hampshire. I like knowing this guy from New York, and now you're right outside Kansas City. I know Seth from Kansas City. If I have a question, like I just think it's so worth it to get out there and just be a part of the community itself. And How long has landscape management been? You said a couple 6 years then?
Yeah, I've been on it for 6 years now.
And so how how has that network grown in just the turf care and landscape side of it? I can't. I'm sure you had a bevy of golf, you know, network, but how fast did that wildfire spread when you started it?
Well, the good news is, like with our event, like the LM Growth Summit that you mentioned, we host that event. So it's like so I do feel the responsibility of making sure that everyone, I got to say hi to everybody and thank everybody for coming and just,
Yeah,
get to work the room. But then I had already been attending like things like Equip Expo and, just traveling what really with the team because Golfdom and landscape management always traveled together anyway. So I was used to being around the industry. But since then, yeah, it's intentional. I do travel a lot because in my mind, my magazine is a part of it. So if you're a reader, you're a part of a community, and I want us to be seen and represented in that community. And a
yeah,
lot of people see my name or they see my picture, but if I can get a chance to really like just say hi to someone and have an interaction, I feel like that might connect them to the magazine better. Because I've got competitors too. I mean, I've got other
yeah.
publications that I'm competing with, and so that's why when we talk about my travel schedule a little bit. When you open an issue of LM up, we have what we call the LM gallery of the places that we've been and seen. And I love that because I think people can see that, like, wow, they're actually really every month they're interacting with the industry. While you
Yeah.
guys are locked in on your jobs, it's our job to be locked in on what's going, meeting with folks.
Well, it's cool because 2 episodes I interviewed Chris Brown, and we had a discussion about just a major big guy, had a huge company, but he loved going to the smaller companies because he would get ideas and thoughts and how they did it. I guess it's very similar for you. Doesn't matter the size of the company; it's really about the story and what you're going after. And I bet the story is so much better than doing a Zoom meeting, trying to write a story, or you being in his shop or her shop and saying,
Mhm.
"Oh, this is really cool. How do you doing this?" I'm sure it's just a better way to write and show what your story basically.
Yeah, for us, what's exciting for us is when we meet interesting people. And that's what's really all of a sudden you're like, okay, hey, this person is enthusiastic, has a nice personality, easy to get along with, and is also got a story to tell. And you can find that it's easier to find that over a dinner or drinks or just visiting someone in person. That story is so much easier to write, especially when things got shut down with COVID and we didn't travel as much and you're
Yeah,
just doing interviews over the phone and you're talking to people and you really don't get the color commentary to support the story, as opposed to shaking someone's hand and being face to face. And I love it. What I love about storytelling is sprinkling little nuggets in that might seem inconsequential to the story, but actually do show you a little bit more about who the person is and like what they're, what they're like when are they rude when they answer the phone or are they friendly? Or is there front of house people are they nice to you when you walk in the door, or do you just have a bunch of people milling about their keyboards and whatnot? So things like that really, if you can get in front of people and really get to meet them, that's when my job becomes easier to be a storyteller at that point.
yeah. And that kind of leads into my next question is like, as you've traveled, I mean, you got to be at hundreds of companies that you've visited and seen and talked to, and probably thousands. Everyone talks about common threads, and I don't want to go down that route because it's really easy to say culture is important, finding employees is important, knowing your books is important. Are there any things that jump out to you in the years of doing this that really, maybe it's how some company treated an employee or how they ran their operation? Is there anything that jumps out at you directly that like, man, that was just a little bit different and just really like maybe pulled your heartstrings, or it was I don't know, just so financially savvy you're like, oh, this is unbelievable how he did this. Anything that jumps out at you?
Well, I think one thing that I always kind of, there are common threads, of course, and you go and talk about, culture's brought up a lot, leadership's brought up a lot. But one thing I think you kind of that I always enjoy is I love it when I hear someone who appreciates that they worked hard, but they also had some lucky breaks. And I find like those stories about the people who talk about, just, having one broken down mower, but dad said, let's go get you a better one. And, or the moment that they went and asked the bank for the loan or whatever. And you know, there's a bunch of sayings about luck. Luck favors the prepared. My favorite is a saying from James Dean, the sausage slash musician. He says, "You have to test your luck every day because you might be walking around lucky all day and not even know it." And I just think that I've tried to appreciate that and live by that in some senses. But I think that one thing I always appreciate about any story is I think a lot of folks viewed themselves as underdogs and they wanted to do better. They wanted to make something great and support the people around them, themselves and then the people who work for them.
Yeah.
And everybody loves an underdog story. And I think a lot of people who appreciate that maybe they don't call it a lucky break, but they recognize that something happened, someone helped them along the way, or something went their way at the right time to enable them to be, I know my lucky break. I have had several, and I always tell people that, if it wasn't for my lucky break, I wouldn't be sitting here right now having a beer with you over Zoom, on a Friday afternoon. So it's
Yeah.
like I could be in a total. I realized I could be in a totally different industry, and I love my job. It's been a very fun. I got to see a lot of cool places. I got to meet a lot of great people, and I do think a lot of it goes back to lucky break, 30 years ago, and I continuously appreciate that.
Well, that's why I love this podcast, because I don't know if anyone's ever said my story better with a lucky break. I never thought, like, I always think, I've always worked hard in my life, a single parent growing up, not a lot. I didn't have a lot growing up, but I always worked hard. I had a lot of good friends, got a lot of families. Like I grew up really good. I'm not saying I had anything to write home about, but I was thinking about my journey from when I worked as a chef and as a restaurateur from the time I was 14 years old in a retirement home till 13, 14 years ago.
Mhm.
So I when I go through that journey, I was like, just exploring who I was as a person. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but then I started this lawn care thing, and like you say luck, and what actually happened is, I'll be open and honest with you. The marijuana is something that I indulge in and I have my whole life. And I worked for Scott's Lawn Care, and I was going through a green light, and someone T-boned me, and I had to go get drug tested instantly. And I failed that drug test, and I got fired. And after that happened, I answered a Craigslist ad. Well, I went back to the restaurant for a little bit, about a year and a half. But then after I realized I really didn't want to do the restaurants anymore, I answered a Craigslist ad and started my old career at Andrews Lawn and Landscaping and Go Green Lawn Services. And it's funny you say luck, because as unfortunate as that accident was, it kind of changed my trajectory as a person and as a husband, a future husband at that point. A lot of things were changing in my life at that point. And that's an interesting perspective to think that that's more of luck than anything else.
It was the moment that made everything else possible, and at that moment,
Right.
I'm sure it was horrifying, and you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? And it was a
Yeah.
rocky road after that. But yeah, I do think that, especially when I'm listening to people's stories and stuff like that, I try to listen for like that. There's questions that I'll always ask people just because it's like kind of your go-to questions that you always want to see what people say. But then I'm always listening for when a person talks to me about the moment that they thought kind of made it all happen. And those origin stories are really interesting. Just like that story was, what would have happened if you would have been, if you would have left 5 minutes later that day, that all of a
Well,
sudden
what would have I done? I was applying at Scott's at the time. We'll call him, his name was John. I won't say his last name because there's probably people that know who he is. He's very popular, big guy in the industry. But and this was me being young. It's no fault to him. It's just me being immature. I was going through the management training program at Scott's or something, and you had to apply for it, and you had to write a little essay, right? And I ran out of space on the paper, so I just flipped the paper over and continued. And when I did it, John was like, "Hey, Chris, hey, you should have retyped this and gave it to me in a good format. That would have been the nice way to do it." And they're like, and those thoughts go through my mind. What would have happened at Scott's? would have I got accepted to that program and I was kind of in it and we were doing things, and where would have that led in my lawn care career? Would have I learned the same things that I learned at Andrews? I don't think so, because when we started that company, we had 300 customers, and when I left, we had 3,000. The knowledge I gained from how to market, how to hire, how to fire, how to deal with problems is way different than it would have been at a huge company like Scott's.
No, yeah, totally different, totally different. And you, yeah, I appreciate that you can look back and think about the that being a big deal about typing something instead of right. And yeah, it's like I had I'll tell you, one of my many lucky breaks came over a game of foosball. I feel like foosball. I'm a pretty good foosball player.
Okay. Foosball's the on the table, right?
Yeah, little soccer players.
With the twirly things?
Yeah. You spin it.
All right, real quick. If I were to pick a game, that would be the last game. Like I am so bad at it. I'm so bad, and I'm athletic. I consider myself very athletic. I'm pretty good at video games, hand-eye coordination. I'm not, but I'm impressed that you're good at it, because anyone that's good at that game, you got a lot going on in that brain.
Well, me and my college roommate, we back in the day when there was a classified section in the newspaper that was where you before Craigslist, we got an apartment together as sophomores, and some senior was graduating and was moving out and was selling his foosball table for $100 or whatever. So we called him up, drove over to his place, bought it. I don't even think we had a truck. I think we had to find somebody with a truck to get it to our place, but we had a foosball table. So I got very good at foosball just by, having, then eventually we had 4 guys living together. So you can imagine there were some pretty epic battles. Yeah. And then several years later, I'm at a golf course industry conference, and you just get to know the people that you're being around. And so I kind of got to know some of my competitors in the industry, in the magazine industry. And but I didn't know the 2 guys, and so they kind of start talking to me. And lo and behold, this John Deere party we're at, there was like a gaming theme was going on. There's a foosball table, so we started talking some trash about foosball. So I grab a partner and I play these guys in foosball, and it was an epic battle. Like no one realized that everyone was actually really good at this table.
Oh boy! So, you didn't sign up for this. You didn't know you were going to be sweating.
All of a sudden, yeah. All of a sudden, it's like, these guys can play. Well, it turns out my playing partner can play too, and so then after that, we're laughing and having a good time and just kind of catching up, so basically, long story short, it was that the guys I was competing against were my competitors in the industry who eventually called me up to hire me away from my previous job, and that was 13 years ago, and I always kind of laughed that I'm glad that we ran into that we got a chance to have a little foosball battle and get to know each other better, because then otherwise I'd still be I won't throw any shade on my old employer. But it was just a lot different. I was able to, by making this switch, I was able to definitely grow into my position, while I was landlocked, so it was a cool moment for me.
Well, it kind of explained that to me, because I want to understand what your position is and kind of what you do and how, editor-in-chief is one title, and now editorial director. You said there really isn't a difference anymore, but what's the role as editor-in-chief then? Because I don't know. I've never written a magazine. I don't know and you have obviously writers under you that help with stories and such, but how does that really work? You guys collaborate and say, we want to write, a bunch of stories on this, and let's go out there as a team, because you said you probably go out there more as a team. Or do you say, hey, I've heard this in this industry, let's get after this and go after it and see what you can, John, can you go get that story?
A little bit of both. So just to give you a quick rundown, like my previous job, I worked for the Golf Course Superintendents Association of America. I was on their magazine called Golf Course Management. That was my college internship that turned into a full-time job. So I started out there as an intern, was hired as an assistant editor. Then I became a senior assistant editor, and couldn't drop that assistant out of there, So I worked.
Titles are the best. LinkedIn titles galore. You can name them all, but go ahead.
Yeah. So I ended up staying there for 12 years, and then when I jumped over to Golfdom, I jumped over as editor-in-chief, which is the head of the brand, editorially speaking. And so now I have a managing editor who works for me, and his job is to make sure things are on deadline, and there's a lot of moving pieces. And he's also a writer. He's a jack of all trades, and I have an associate editor who works for me. He's our young guy, just fresh out of Ohio State. And at North Coast Media, we start out our people, the new editors, as associate editors. The editor in chief is the guy who's responsible for anything that doesn't involve advertising in the magazine. So anything that's written in the magazine, the original content, is basically I'm the one who I don't have to write it all, but I'm in charge of making sure it's all accurate, making what's direction are we taking each story, and then I try to write as many as 6 cover stories a year, depending on how we're doing. But if you've ever seen any of the Spider-Man movies, J. Jonah Jameson, the guy smoking the cigar, yelling, "Get me photos of Spider-Man." He's the editor in chief. I say, hey, we gotta get a photo. We gotta get a photo of this mower in action. Where is it going to be, and who do we know in that area? So, editorial director was a way. I got a promotion at North Coast Media a while back where they named me editorial director just as a way to give me so on the masthead. The company has 6 magazines in all. So I'm one of I think I'm the second longest tenured editor there at this. Well, at least at the top, as an editor in chief. So,
gotcha.
So it's I'm one of the people there who's, grown up with this company. The company's not that old, even though the magazines are old. The company spun off of a different publishing company, and one of our guys made his own new company, bought some magazine, figured it out how to do it, and I've hitched my horse to him, and it's been good. So it's pretty good.
So
it's family owned.
So the magazine itself, Landscape Magazine and Golfdom, have been around longer than
yeah.
I guess I get it. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So Golfdom, actually, first issue of Golfdom came out in 1927. So I mean, it goes. It's arguably the second oldest American golf magazine behind Chicago Golfer. So it's got a rich history. Now Landscape Management goes back to the 60s. So I mean, it's also, and so you can imagine these magazines just it's the publisher, it's the company that owns it that changes everyone. So eventually, it's like players get swapped in the transaction here, and but now these publications are all owned by North Coast Media, based in Cleveland.
Got ya. Next question I have, because I'm very interested now. Because you're editor in chief, is it fearful of you bringing up because it would, like, for me to bring on a podcast guest, I'm always looking for maybe not content, entertainment. Podcasts are a little bit different, but as you write, are you ever fearful of spending all this time on a story and you didn't get one mention? Like, no one ever said anything to you about this one story, or not in particular, but how hard is that for you to overcome, that you want to pursue something because you think this is a good story, and will your readers think this is a good story? That's got to be a conundrum for you, right? At some point.
I think probably a better way to describe that would be is like, what if I think it's going to be a good story and it just doesn't turn out to be a good story? If I think it's a good story and I get the right amount of sources and it's fair, and and there's decent beginning, middle, and end, I'm at the point in my career to where I can publish that and feel good and say, hey, I had enough sources, the quotes were good, everything was fact checked, and if it didn't set the world on fire, I'll get another shot next month. Yeah, that's now what, because sometimes, Chris, honestly, in magazine publishing with a print media, you can do something and you might not ever get feedback on it, and you just got to kind of hope that that people didn't just flip right past that page. What I tell people a lot that I worry about is what if the cover doesn't captivate someone to open the magazine right when they see it? Because I've got these magazines sitting right here that I've been meaning to get to for a few months now, and I still haven't gotten to them yet. So I'm always, my paranoia is this cover needs to really sing, and you need to make sure that give a reason for that reader to open the magazine and flip through it. And so it's got to have some punch in there. The online stuff, obviously we can track it and we know it, and we can publish all that stuff online and see how it's done, and that's fine. I mean, we do watch our metrics pretty good to see what's doing.
And see, that's how I take in your media is I just go online and flip through the stories and read. That's how I go through it.
And a lot of people
the magazine comes and I look at it, but I've already probably consumed all the stuff that I wanted to consume out of it through the website.
Yeah, and we're fine with that, but we're very dedicated and loyal to the print product because we feel like the
I
print
have to
is
be.
it's easy to delete an email, it's easy to overlook an email, but if you get something physical, and then you can read it and throw it on the break room table, and somebody else might read it. So we're very into our print production. That's why we pay good money for photography, and we have talented designers who try to make it look good because our website looks good too, but we want to make sure the magazine, like we have 2-page spread in the magazine. We want people to like go, oh, someone took some time on this, and I'm
Yeah,
going to read these captions.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So busy season. The rest of the how many shows are you going to be visiting over the next couple? Is it this is show season, right? I mean, over the
Yeah,
next 3 months
yeah, it'll
after
be
the world
busy.
shuts down.
Yeah, yeah. We got Equip right around the corner. Equip
Yep,
exposition in October. Then Elevate is moved, and then we'll have the Landscape Management Growth Summit, and then the Golfdom Summit in back-to-back weeks,
yep.
and then the irrigation shows coming up, and then we also have Syngenta's Business Institutes coming up, and the Green Start Academy at Pinehurst is on my calendar. I won't be able to go to all of these. I'll have to at some point. In some point, they just overlap, and it's not fair for me to go to all of them. Obviously, my staff wants to. I have young editors who want to get out on the road. They
Absolutely.
find it exciting to be out and to travel and to meet people, and they need that for their experience as well. It's just so we try to divvy up as much as possible. But you can imagine, I mean, I've got to be at Equip, I've got to be at Elevate, I've got to be at our summits. Those are my daughter's birthday has conflicted with the Golfdom Summit for the past 7 years in a row, and it kills me. And so we had to celebrate it beforehand. But I'm like, it's literally my event. I'm the
Yeah.
moderator. I do all of it there, so I can't miss it. So uh,
Well, when I was leaving the summit last year, I saw the polos switch, and I
yeah,
was like, what do you guys?" I was like, "Why are you Seth? Why are you still here?" And you're like, I'm doing another one, like back, like
let's
we're
go.
doing them right back to back. Let's go.
Yeah,
No time but the present. And that's how I figured out. I was like, oh, I guess I gotta re-golf them now. I mean, I'm an avid golfer. I run my own golf league,
nice.
beer league, golf league. So I love it. I love it. I love it. And I hate it. I had the worst round of golf I've ever played in probably 7, 8 years. Last Sunday, I
Oh,
gave up. I haven't given up on the golf course in quite some time. And on the 14th or 15th hole, I said, I'm just going to take two clubs. When I get close, I'll chip it in, putt it, and be done with it. But
oh, that's rough. That's
love
rough.
hate relationship. Well, how did you know? All let's shift back. We got a little bit of time here. I want to know how you got into. Do you love golf? Like golf, the Golf magazine was the first job out of college.
It was, and I didn't love golf. As a matter of fact, I don't know that I even played golf until I got the job. But I did. So my dad
Do you
was
play golf now?
I do. Yeah, I
Okay,
enjoy it.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I always wanted to play golf, and we didn't have a high school golf team. And my dad was in the Air National Guard in Wichita, and they had a base golf course, and I always begged him to take me, and he never would. He said it was a frustrating game. You don't want. And we were an athletic family. We like to play basketball and whatnot. A big soccer family, and so I'd never played. But when I was at Kansas University studying journalism, I had a professor who said they kind of knew who you were at this point, and they knew that I was big into sports, I was big into music, pop culture. I was hoping to do something along one of those lines. And so she came up to me and said, do you have any interest in an internship with a golf magazine? And I said, yeah, where's it at? We're going to Florida. What's this all
Yeah,
about? And
yeah, yeah,
she said, no, it's here in Lawrence. And I said, you got to be kidding me. So that's when I first learned about this association that was there. So I went and interned for them. And then I started taking golf lessons, and I actually worked on a maintenance crew. Once I got hired full time there, I went and worked on maintenance for a summer to try and get a grasp on my beat. What was it like
yeah.
to so I did it as a weekend job, and that was rough to have a Monday through Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday
I
you're
was
up.
going to ask you. I had that question written down. Did in all this 23 years, did you ever actually, get on the turf, man?
I did, yeah, I did for a little bit, as much until I felt like it was enough length of time to politely quit because it was kicking my ass. It was
Yeah,
it was early hours and I was young and I'm sure I was out late the night before, but then I'd be out there. It was really a good education and it was fun to do if I was just more mature at the time, which well, I'm still not
Yeah.
mature, but so yeah, I got into golf and then I started playing golf at some really nice courses. And as a high handicapper, that's really a hard thing to do, and it's embarrassing. I always, in my mind, I really feel like I just wasn't like you say you weren't geared to play foosball. Golf has always been mysterious to me. I feel like I'm fairly athletic, but I've had some decent rounds, but I regularly I'm happy if I shoot in the 90s. You know, I mean, I'm just like
Yeah.
I'm a high handicapper, but I play fast. I'm pretty good at I'm a pretty decent scramble partner because I'm good on the greens. And so I'm at the point to where I'm comfortable enough in my own skin on the golf course. But I'll tell you how bad it was, Chris. For a long time, I had a reoccurring nightmare about golf. It was me on the first tee.
Well, I'm
And,
thinking of you at Pinehurst doing a story, and
mhm,
then they ask you to, hey, do you want to play this round?
mhm. Did I tell you how much I've played? I've probably played Pinehurst number two about as much as I've played. Well, other than my local course here, I've probably played it 5 times now, and it's all but every time it was just as an invite from the USGA or from John Deere or someone. And I've had some great. I'm one of those guys who can kind of rise to the occasion. If I have a
Well,
caddy and I
listen,
get someone kind
I'm
of
going to
coaching
pause
me,
you right there. I'm going to say there was no ulterior motive to this podcast until that last sentence came out of your mouth. Just, just so we're clear. So if I'm ever in the Pinehurst area,
well, I know some people.
you just Christopher Stout. Just think about that lonely podcast you did back in back in August.
You got it. You got it. So yeah, I've played some stupid nice golf courses. Some of my golf
That's
stories
great.
are, yeah, and my buddies who've known me for a long time are always like, who grew up playing, they always like, how are you the one that ended up in the golf business? And I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
know. Journalism. That's it, you know.
You should have been a great right. You should have been playing golf. You should have been writing in high school. I don't know what to tell you.
Exactly. So it was just lucky. If I'd have turned it into, I'm a big basketball fan, and if Kansas Jayhawks are right here, and I would have
Yeah.
loved to have covered college basketball, but if I would have, it would not have been as nearly as interesting as being in the golf business as long as because I mean you know, it's everywhere.
Were
It's
you
all over the
able
world.
to? I mean, you must have been. You're right, and you must have been able to get out to all these tournaments and do story. I mean, have
Mhm.
you met Tiger Woods?
I've I've talked to him. He's not a guy that you ever get in a one, at least if, at my level, that you get onto a one-on-one because he's
Yeah.
always surrounded by if he's going to do media it's in a press conference. So I've thrown a question at him once or twice. But the other guys, I've pretty much gotten, especially not so much the young guns right now.
But
The
like
new guys,
Bubba and like maybe like Phil or someone like that.
yeah. Phil's difficult, so we'll pass by Phil. But like guys
Gotcha.
like Jim Furyk's one of my favorites. I always talk to him if
Yeah.
I see him. He's super nice. And then Gary Woodland's a Jayhawk, so I try to always get him on the mic when I'm around him. But yeah, and some of the older guys, I got to meet Arnold Palmer. I got to go into his office and shake his hands.
Wow.
Tom Watson, I know a little bit because he's local, and I actually had a pretty cool moment. I'll have to email you the photo when we wrap up, but because I got it saved on my desktop. But I needed a photo. I was doing a story about a youth golf initiative that Tom Watson was doing, and
Okay.
so I'm thinking I need some young youth golfers for models to be with. I know two of them, and they live here in my house. So I set it all up and got a professional photographer to meet them on the golf course. So I've got this great photo of Tom Watson and my daughter doing a golf lesson together on the cover of Golfdom. It's
Wow.
so cool. It's so cool.
Well, I mean, like you said, luck. I mean, could you imagine, 16-year-old Seth, thinking about having his daughter on the cover of the magazine that he's editor in chief of, and you're hanging out with Tom Watson? I mean, that's what dreams are made of, and
Yeah.
congratulations. Like that's really cool. I mean, it's really, really, really cool, and you can convert that to anything. If it's a surfing magazine, if it's a plumbing magazine, it could be
Mhm.
any kind of magazine, and that's really cool, man.
I forgot to mention the time that Nick Price let me join him on his Cessna and we flew down to Cancun together. So
Hey, hey.
he's a favorite.
Well, this might be the theme of the podcast, but rather be lucky than good.
Yeah, exactly. Because I am not, especially when it comes to playing golf. I am not any good. But every once in a while I get a lucky break. But yeah, that is definitely another lucky thought that I abide by.
Nice, nice. Well, I want to ask you another. Like you run this landscape magazine. Is your yard pristine? Are you inspired by turf now, or have you been?
I've always tried to keep a pretty nice yard, and shout out to the folks at Ryan Lawn and Tree. They take care of me. So I moved out of the city, and I'm out in I've got a rural area out here. We've got 5 acres, and about the front half of the property is I take pretty good care of. The back is woods, so that's just the woods. But so they come out here and they take care of me, and then I do my best to do the rest of the work, and so that includes
Following recommendations.
yeah. And I also I have there's times where I'll ask I'll be at the LM Growth Summit and I'll find a chance to say, hey, I've got this problem. What do I do? And they're like, you probably need to try this, and we've got that, and I'll ship you some. I'm like, okay, yeah. I didn't, that's totally cool, right? It's like, oh yeah. You just need a little bit. So yeah, I've got a little
That's
bit of
nice.
arsenal in the cabinet. Right now, the yard's it's been pretty dry here for a little bit. It's gonna and pretty hot here in Northeast Kansas. Actually had a pretty decent summer, but my neighbor always gives me a hard time. And just the other day, I was over there, and he pulls me. He's like, hey, I got an aerator, and I got I got a bunch of seed, and here's my plan. Do you think 100 pounds is enough for this? And I'm like, dude, you talking? No. He's like, well, how'd you get your yard? And I'm like, Ryan Lawn and Tree. Ryan Lawn and Tree. I love
Right.
luck when it rains. And he's
Yeah.
like, okay. I'm like, so yeah, I'm not gonna mark off square footage for anyone and say you need this, but
Yeah.
but I know who to hire and I know how to mow. So
Oh, you do mow. That was
yeah,
like because I know you travel a lot. I was like in my back of my head. I was like he probably has a service just because of convenience. You
no,
mow. Well, listen. You
I,
mowing makes all the difference.
I love to
In
mow.
in
I love, yeah, that was one of the things I actually loved to mow at my old place when I was push mowing still, and I'm riding now, but yeah, I love and I don't even mind string trimming, and I get after it. It's kind of a fun way for me to do a workout with actually doing with as opposed to doing a workout, which is kind of boring. So
yeah,
that's my summer. That's me getting after on the weekends.
yeah. You kind of zone out. It's a great couple minutes of well. Sometimes you got half a couple acres. It's about a couple hours then for you.
A little over an hour, yeah. But my 12-year-old finally is tall and heavy enough to ride the mower without bouncing and killing the engine every time. So I've got some help. He doesn't realize how much, and he enjoys mowing too. So I'm kind of starting him off on the light work, but pretty soon we'll be a 2-man crew out here. He doesn't know what he's in for, but we're going to take it next level. My wife does all the landscaping. She loves to garden and she loves flowers, so she does all that. So
Oh,
yeah, it's we make a pretty
perfect.
good team. Yeah, I take care of the
Yeah,
grass. She takes care of the
I get
rest.
made fun of in my neighborhood. Obviously, I have the best grass. I tell everybody I would hope I have the best grass, but they'll see me out at 8:30 at night watering my garden. Pitch dark out, and
Mhm.
they're like, Chris, what are you doing? And you mowed 3 times in 2 weeks. I'm like, well, if you mowed 3 times in 2 weeks, your lawn would be nice and green too. Okay, it's the
Exactly.
spring. You got to mow a lot. You can't
Yep.
you can't let it build up. And then they're like, you're nuts. And I said, I know, I'm a little nuts. I love my lawn. And I just recently this year got a zero turn. So now I have like big stripes because I had the little guy and I bought the little roller in the back. So,
Mhm.
but man, own my own business. This year I ran out of time. I
Yeah.
didn't have the time to do it.
Yeah.
Simple as
Even when I
that.
travel, I'll tell you how bad I am. We took a family vacation we always go down to South Texas to see my wife's family. And so we're driving, and I knew I had to get back in time and I was going to fly out the next day for a business trip. So I intentionally left with enough time so I could mow on the day that I got back before I had to fly out again because I was going to basically be gone for 2 weeks. But I had it all mapped out. And then and so I'm like I'm trying to hustle, I'm racing traffic all the way through from Dallas to Kansas, right? And passing semis and trying to make the pit stops as quick as possible. And then finally we get here and I've got plenty of time. I'm like, oh man, I overachieved. I'm gonna get this all done in time.
Well,
I
you
did
beat the
about
timer on your
yeah,
GPS, which
exactly.
is
I did about 3 stripes the belt snapped on me. And I was like, oh, and so I was like, and so I just parked it and I was like, okay, guess you're just packing for actually I already even packed my bag. So I was like, guess you're sitting here and watching the grass grow. It killed me. I was like, this is gonna look so bad by the time I get back, but
yeah.
okay.
It stinks. It stinks. It's like well, I lost a like I'm a lawn care operator owner. I have access to everything you could ever put on a lawn. And last year I lost like a 6x7 section in my front yard to I think it was brown patch. I wasn't paying attention to it and it was just like boom and it was gone. And I was like, damn it, like
Do they have to be in the
but
front
this
yard?
year's been rough. It's been a very, I'm sure you've been out there. It's been dry here in the Northeast. I mean, we
Mhm.
went a solid 8 weeks with no rain. I mean, it
Mhm.
was, and everyone's like, oh, it's so nice out. It's getting cooler. It's so beautiful. I was like, yeah, we're on day 21 or 17 without any rain again.
Mhm.
So we're
Mhm.
starting to look bad again.
Ugh, that's rough.
It makes the season tougher because we do more service calls and everything's just a little tougher. The grass isn't as nice, but we're gonna have the goal is to have a fantastic renovation season. I mean,
Mhm.
everyone's lawn looks like that, and everyone's gonna need it fixed. So
Yeah, exactly. So it's gonna you're gonna be busy.
yeah. So last question. We got a little bit of time, so we're not really last question, but Grow Summit. We went last year. Me and Steve, my business partner, went last year, and I wanted to know because I've been to a bunch of them, and no other conference slash whatever you want to call these things were were set up the way you guys have it set up. Very intimate setting, 120 people. Meet the vendors. Who inspired that? What was the thought process behind that? Because like I said with earlier in the podcast, I think networking is amazing, and I've been going to the Workwave slash Real Green conference for many years. I've met a bunch of guys, but I've been going that for 8 years, and I maybe met 10 guys that I really still can't say.
Yep.
I went to I went to Grow Summit one year, and I now have 3 or 4 guys that you know, I never thought I'd be in contact with Chris Brown from Teed Brown.
Mhm.
He's what an amazing person and mentor he hopefully is going to be. So where was the thought process and how'd that come up?
Well, thanks for giving me a chance to talk about that because it is very different than any industry that anything that I've been to in the industry, and I do it in two industries. I do it on the golf side and on the lawn care side. So the origin of it. So before North Coast Media, the company was called QuestX, and they had They had a magazine that was covering Silicon Valley, and as you can imagine, to get some of these high rollers into a room to meet with their partners was becoming impossible to the point to where they felt like they were losing. Like they had a small trade show that they did, and it just was too unattractive to these high end, super busy, super high tech guys. And so they created this model, and the model is real simple. You reduce the number of attendees, and you limit the number of partners, and you make the magazine the middleman. So a lot of times we call it speed dating for the industry. But so what we do is we limit it to about 25, 30 lawn care companies that we invite. We ask people to apply, and if they're in the business of fertilizing and taking care of grass, these are our people. Not necessarily people who are doing. It's not like an irrigation show. It's not a snow and ice show. It's very limited. It's just kind of a narrow focus we have. But so we invite 25, 30 people who of various sizes business, and so all they got to do is get there. And once they get there, we take care of their hotel, we take care of their food and bev, we take care of their golf round. We just want them there, and we want their attention, because then I've got 12, 15 magazine partners who advertise in our magazine who want to be a part of this, and they come in because they know they're going to get to meet with the attendees. And because it's such a small group of guys, we can arrange the agenda to guarantee that every attending company will meet with every partner company. And the way we do that is, first we give everybody a chance to have like a 10-minute conversation, a presentation to the whole group of guys. And then once that's done, a little networking reception, and then we're done for the day. Day two starts, and we give everyone their personalized schedule. So, a company shows up in the door. You guys, you showed up, and you had this one specific agenda that was only your agenda, and you went from either room to room to room to room based on 15-minute increments, or you went out onto the driving range and got demo in 15 minutes. And so as you're going around this big old pinwheel, everybody's doing the same thing. So everyone's
Yeah.
just going. So the attending partners are sitting there, and if they're sitting there in their hotel room with the table set up, maybe they have a PowerPoint on the flat screen or whatever, they're sitting there and they're just like 2 guys are walking in, 15 minutes later, they walk out, 2 more guys walk in. And so by the end of it, if everybody has met everybody and there's maybe 90 people there total,
Yeah.
and at some point between everybody's had a chance to say hi to each other. If there's questions, you got a chance to follow up on the golf course, because then we throw everybody on the golf course and we're gonna pair you up with 3 random people, probably another lawn care operator, and then maybe 2 of our partners. So there's 3.5, 4 hours. You're really going to get to know someone. So so at the end of it gives me a chill to hear stories like that. And I've just now, when I was at the Summer Growth Summit, I saw a guy who had attended one years ago, and I said hi, and he pulled up his assistant, and he's like, "Hey, you got to listen. I want to meet you meet Seth." And he goes, "I went to his LM Growth Summit, and this is where we learned about that spreader." And then so now, and they're like, "Oh," and then they're like kind of like having this conversation between themselves, and I was like, I could tell that they were really jazzed, that like they had something that made a difference in their company. And he kind of credits me for that, because
Yeah.
he came to our event. So to me, that's like, we love in the magazine business, we want to tell good stories and we want to be a successful magazine. It's a business. We're trying to make a buck. But there is the other level of thinking that we might be affecting people's lives once in a while and their businesses. And so for this event to be a successful event for us, but to also be successful for our partners and for our attendees, it like you saw me switching the polo. We trade brands and we're dog tired by the end of it. But it's become something that has been a huge asset to me because of my expanded network. Because before this, when I didn't have this event, I was depending on bigger trade shows, and you really either see the people at your booth or you go see the people at their booth, and then you have those quick, erratic conversations where you don't know how to be cordial and then get to business, and then it's over because someone
Yeah.
else is at the booth, or
And
you
then
see,
you're at the party.
and then you're at the
You're
party.
like passing by, you know, they're passing. And it's like, you can't have everybody's searching for a pigs in a blanket, and you're, there's a time for an intimate conversation. And that's what I like. That's what I loved about it. And that's why I said to Steve, I was like, we're applying this year. I know we're not, second attendees. I was like, but the reason why is because it was, it confirmed a lot of my doubts, if that makes sense. I was able to have some conversations with like-minded individuals that wasn't in this work wave, real green, corporate, you can call it service titan, in any of those
Yeah.
big conferences where there's thousands of people, and you're shuffled around to these hot rooms that you don't really get to ask your question. And it's really just 101 classes, like how do you send an email from your platform. Like, we all know how to do that, right? And so that's why it was so nice it was me and Steve confirming that we're doing things right, and running that information through PBI or whoever the Steel Green is love that having down there, because I can talk to them about my Steel Green and what's coming for them and have a good conversation. Well, you're at all these other conferences. It's like boom, boom, boom. There's 1,000 people waiting to talk to this guy about a stinger. I had before we teed off, I talked to him 45 minutes. He let me run the brand new one up and down the fairway.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know what you mean. And it was funny too, even in that same meeting, the guy was like, he's like, "This is where I met the president of the company." He was like, he was like bragging about it. And I'm like, man, I've traveled the world with that guy. I know that guy really well, because he always does our events. We see him all the time. But yeah, and for sure, man, we'll get you and Steve back out again sometime. And it's just got, based on the format, the partners who pay the
Absolutely.
bills, they always want to see like a fresh group of guys. So we're actively recruiting right now. So if you know somebody, we can't get Stout Lawn Care back 2 years in a row because I'll get in trouble with our partners. But if anybody's listening, or tell
Well,
somebody.
I sent a couple companies, one in Jersey, one up in Connecticut, up in Mass, two real good guys that I met through Real Green that are excellent business owners, and definitely could benefit from it. They're good
Hey,
guys.
good. I'll keep my eyes peeled for them.
But yeah, I mean, that was really it. I mean, I don't have too much more. I do have to give a shout out to our sponsor, because this podcast, as small as it still does have a little sponsor. It's Steph and Brian from Tick and Skeeter Deleter. They're great people, all natural, outdoor insect control. They've made my business a lot easier to sell and it's a little bit more work, but our customers and our environment benefit from it without a doubt. So I
Heck
love
yeah,
that.
man. And it's in there, and that stuff's in the news right now. West Nile, I mean, trust me, it was on the Today Show this morning, and I'm thinking about you guys when, well, I'm thinking about my family, first of all, because that's spooky. It's Labor Day weekend and we want to get it. We're going to be outside. I'll be grilling on Saturday, but then you
Yeah.
watch something like that and you're like, oh boy. And I'm thinking, when was the last time I had a mosquito control out here? And, it's, yeah, I got, that's a good one to have. I'm glad that the technology is there and it's effective, which is, it's pretty cool that the companies who
Yeah.
know how to do mosquito
And
control
there's
can do it.
there's obviously products that have residual effects for longer, 30, 60, 90 days. We try to be on properties every 20 to 28 days. So we're on properties, real fast all the way to spring through fall. We're almost done
Mhm.
our bug control, but they've been great friends, and I met them at the Work Wave conference, and many years ago. I've been going to that for probably almost 8-9 years now, and your network is your net worth. It's very important, and having you on here, Seth, I knew it was going to be informative. I knew it was going to be a good conversation because just the experiences you've had in the industry, the fun I had at the Growth Summit, and I appreciate you being on here and taking a couple minutes out of your time. Anything to add? I mean, I wanted to ask you, what was it? I don't know if I'm going to remember. I
One
forget.
thing, think on it. One thing I'll add is that I'm grateful for you to invite me, because it's fun to be asked the questions once in a while, and it's different because I do realize it's moments like that where I'm like, man, I wonder how many times I've been at a dinner party where I did a lot of listening, and because I'm trying to observe a lot, and throw in add my 2 cents here and there where I can, but then I'm thinking, man, there's sometimes where I should probably just like pipe up, because if you find out that someone is like a golf fan, or I travel a lot, or there's some stories that I want to tell, because it's been 25 years of travel and interviewing folks, and you can imagine how many audio files I have laying around of just
Well,
talking.
how hard is it to find a real story these days, right? Like not a real story, but an impactful story after a year of 23 years of writing. Like what kind of story? You said a little bit, coming from the bottom and making your way up and having that luck, but what it really inspires you to write at this point? You've probably seen most of the stories. Oh, did I lose you?
Oh, no, I'm back. Okay, got you.
All
You
right,
there?
cool.
Okay, cool.
Did you hear that
Yeah, I got
question?
you. No, I heard your question. My
Perfect.
Starlink all of a sudden just told me I'm unstable. I'm out here in the country, man. I'm on satellite internet, so the
How's that?
satellites.
Does Starlink work? They're
It,
on sale at Amazon or Costco right now.
oh yeah, Starlink is pretty amazing. Compared if you're out rural, if I was in town and could get, Ethernet high speed stuff, I would do that. But because I'm rural, I have to do satellite. It's the best satellite internet I've had. It's remarkable. It's
Okay,
especially with my job.
good to
It's
know.
important for me to, yeah. And of course, I just glitched out for a second, but yeah, most of the time it's pretty good. Um, but yeah, no, I think one thing to keep in mind is on both magazines, we try to walk the balance between like um, good stories about people doing good things, and then more practical stories about what's the latest and greatest. So we map out our year and try to decide how what's coming each month. Like when we do our LM 150, we know when that's coming out. We know when we're doing our Equip Education and Equip Expo preview story. So
Yeah.
we try to do a balance as much as we can about practical stuff about getting the job done, ways to improve the business, technology you might not know of. And we try to be on the forefront of that. And we're also doing stuff on like mergers and acquisitions and the business and the economy and what are your customers doing and how do so there's all these different buckets that we're, and then I didn't even mention think about the different buckets we got to report on. Turf and ornamental, mowing and maintenance, design, build, installation, irrigation and water management, snow and ice. So there's like all these different animals that we got to try and control and feed each issue. So one of the things that we really strive on doing is to try to check as many boxes as we can each issue, and then here once in a so doing that is like 85% of the job, and then 15% of it is like once in a while saying, hey, this guy's just got a hell of a story that we're going to tell this guy's story. I don't care what type of business he's in, or you got to hear this guy's story. So it's a mix, and I get satisfaction out of the different. I like, for example, I had a guy thank me because he caught me. He said, "I want." Not every magazine covers the irrigation industry like you do, and I always feel like people leave us out. So please keep that up. And I was like, right on, irrigation guy. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just, yeah.
Score
I was
one
like,
for the irrigation guys.
yeah. I was like, trust me, I'm gonna make sure we satisfy the irrigation network here. We're gonna keep that's we're gonna go to the irrigation show and we're gonna report on it. We're gonna do, so that's a big part of it for me, is just to try to make sure that we get a well-balanced magazine out each month, and then once in a while we'll get a chance. And I always tell my editors, you never know when you get on the phone with someone when you're going to get like a home run of an interview. So you got to hope for it each time. But sometimes you just get an interview where you get a couple quotes and you're going to maybe use the source and ask them for a photo, but it was just okay. But then when you get that home run of an interview, you got to be ready to like really lock in and get the person talking and learn about them, and then how are you going to tell that story? So I always have them on high alert, because I tell them, when you write a memorable story about someone that's and it's it's going to be a memorable story, you don't know when you're going to get your next one. It might be a while. So you got to capitalize on those. So when I get someone who's really memorable, I take it dead serious, because I'm like, I only get one shot at writing this story, and I got to make it sing, because this dude, I know this guy he already gave me a great story. I just got to put it together now.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I got nothing else. All my notes are cleaned up. I really appreciate you jumping on. Good luck with the Grow Summit this year. Happy for everyone that goes. And when the cycle goes through and you get a couple more sponsors and they change, don't forget about Stout Lawn Care. I would go to the Equip Expo, but it's just too broad for us. We just do fertilizer services. It's a fun time. Don't get me wrong. It's a great event. Maybe when we're bigger, we'll just get out there just to take me and Steve out there just to see it, because it's impressive to see and just to see it. It's fun to be there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we have so many. It's such a massive show, and we're very we have a good partnership with Equip, so we love supporting it. And yeah, I get it if it doesn't fit your niche, but you'll see me running around. I'll have my whole crew. I'll have a big crew. I think I'm going to probably take literally almost 16, 17 people with me this year, because we're taking most of my team, and then we're bringing the whole marketing team with us too. So you're going to see, if you hit it with Equip, they're going to see landscape management logos going all over the place. So it's going to be good.
Well, I better see a lot of Seth's Corners then. I mean, we didn't get to talk about Seth's Corners. And is that your garage?
It is, yeah. Thanks for noticing. I haven't
seriously.
Yeah, I haven't shot that in a while. I think I've missed like two months now, and I'm glad someone asked me about it, because I was told the metrics aren't great on it, so maybe I need to reconsider it. But I'm like, I don't know. I think some people watch it, so it's fun.
My metrics on this podcast are probably terrible. I try to look at the metrics, but I do this because I did interview with Chris Brown the two episodes ago, and I literally got, I don't know, 5 or 6 people that reached out and said, hey, that was really fun to listen to and pretty informative, and it was a great interview. And people are like, why do you keep doing this? I was like, because I think it's fun, and I don't care what you guys think, and I'm just going to do it.
Yeah, don't ever discourage someone's creativity. That's what in my mind, I'm like, don't, if I have the 10 minutes to do it, don't discourage my creativity with metrics, because it might and I do get comments on that once in a while. Just real quick, it's the HOJ, the Hall of Justice is what I call it, and I got it's a 2-car Morton building that when we moved here right before COVID, so I converted it into a sports bar, and so I got 2 big screens out there, foosball, 3 arcade games, Pop a Shot, a kegerator,
draft beer. I saw that.
I got awesome. Got the kegerator, and I got my '64 Impala in there too. And so if company's coming over, if I know if the Chiefs are playing and a bunch of people are coming over, I'll pull the Impala out to open up for some more seating. But it's especially when the weather's nice, because it is definitely not climate controlled. It's just a aluminum building. It's a garage,
I love it.
It's great. I got the propane torch out there for when it gets a little cold out. So
well, that's my shop right now. That's how I keep in the wintertime when I'm doing it, I just break out the little propane heater and keep my little corner warm.
Yep. So if you're ever in Northeast Kansas, man, come by the HOJ. The draft beer is it's cold. It's usually Keystone Light. I'm not gonna lie. It's just keg beer, but it's cold.
Keystone Light, man. Said you were talking my language. That was
Good,
my
good.
that was my favorite. I mean, it goes down like water because it tastes like water. That's what I used to
Exactly.
say.
Yep. Exactly.
Awesome, man. Well, listen, Seth, I can't. I'm humbled that you got onto my podcast, and I appreciate you giving me an hour here. And I don't know what to say. Thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Christopher, it's my pleasure. Thanks for all you do for us too. So we'll stay in touch. Okay.
All right, sounds good.
Okay. Take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.
I'm talking to you.